Should I have put a trigger warning on this video? I feel like I should have put a trigger warning. If it's not already, this is your trigger warning. Sad hard drive SSD vibes ahead. Hello and welcome back to a frankly rather miserable video here at NAS Compares. Now, it's no surprise to you, it's no surprise to me, it's no surprise to anyone that hard drive pricing in summer 2026 is bonkers. But I think a number of us have actually lost our thread on just how bonkers hard drive and SSD pricing has become. I'm as oblivious in some cases as much as you are. And this video today is a rather miserable step through the history of the B-roll I've used here on the channel, looking at how much hard drive and SSD prices have changed. It would be very easy for me to just stick camel on the screen and show you a chart going bananas, and I will do a bit of that later. But this is the evidence of recordings I've done in previous videos and how they stack, in some cases, not even a year later, seeing 100% price markups. Now, what was the catalyst for this video? Well, come over to the screen, and I know you're thinking, why are you wearing that, Rob? This is what I wear when I'm sad, all right? Sue me. But I was creating an article here for a separate video that I'm working on at the moment, the enshittification of network attached storage. And I was sort of talking about 10 layers of things that have gone wrong in the world of NAS in the last year and a half to 2 years. And one of the points I was highlighting was hard drive pricing. And I was fishing out this image. This is how much a 28 TB drive during Black Friday 2025, so that's the end of November 2025, was when it was on offer, $449. This is that price today, $1,000 and 20 extra dollars change. The same hard drive, and that is insane. And the more I dug, when I was getting ready to make the video for this article, one that may or may not already be live, I started going through my B-roll, and on the left-hand side of the screen here, you're going to find lots of cut B-roll I used in different videos, and on the right-hand side, we're going to price some of these up. Now, I'm not stupid. All of these are going to be more expensive. There is no big, M. Night Shyamalan twist in this video. There isn't going to be actually, they're cheap. They're not. They're all too expensive. So if you've come to this video thinking there's a deal, there isn't. This is about all of us wallowing, putting on our playful hoodies and rocking back and forth in the hope that this nightmare will end. Also, I should add, I've not done any prep and gone through all of these much in advance. I've shortlisted these videos, I've glanced at them, I've not looked at just how much the pricing has changed there. But if we go to the oldest one here, this is 2023, we can see here by opening this up, this was a comparison I was doing with how hard drive and SSD pricing was starting to reach parity in 2023 because of things like Chia. Again, how little we knew back then, and this is where you could get a SATA 4TB hard drive for $104. That was when it was starting to go up slightly, but you could also pick up a SATA M.2 NVMe at 2TB at $84. And as you can see, straight away, and I just checked this one while moving the camera, you can't even get the 2TB drive anymore. The 1TB variation of this drive, that is a SATA M.2 for the love of the game, and that is $125. So even the most basic drive has already started to get a kick in. Not enough? All right then, let's go with some of Synology's drives. This is something from 2023. This is when Synology was starting to formally roll out their Plus series of drives there. So let's go on the other side. What was this in? B&H. We've got B&H ready. Let's go with Synology, what are they called? Plus HAT series drives. We're going to go for that older generation as well, because the HAT 3300, they've stopped making that drive. So any price increase that we're going to see there, either by Synology or B&H, is artificial as hell, because these drives were produced a long time ago. So again, if we look at the video here on the left, we're seeing 4TB. A 4TB HAT 3300 Plus drive, they had it priced at $89. That drive is now $229. Now, there is the counter argument we could make there that that drive has gone up because of its rarity and some people trying to scale up their RAID. I personally think that's absolute horse S, because $149 for the 6, $300 for the 6TB now. Let's move forward. What other capacities do we have in my stock footage? Let's look at the 8TB. There isn't even an 8TB anymore. But even then, if we're Lucky we could pick up a 16 TB for $600. So again, I think we're already starting to see whether that is Synology or B&H, I just don't know, or maybe it's the reseller in between, has already taken to even these ancient hard drives, skyrocketing that pricing. And I know it's the 3310 series, but that's actually the second gen of those drives, not even the third. What about the premium Eastern SSDs? What have we got here? We've got ourselves an SK Hynix Platinum P41, and it's priced there at $159. When was that from? That is from January 2024. So how has that changed the game? Let's paste you into there. And what have we got here? So again, what we're looking at, the 2TB model. Do they even have the 2TB model? Do you know what? That's the older generation drive. Let's go into there and hopefully find a tab for the other capacities. I mean, hell, that is 500 gig for $285 when it was $159 in 2024. I mean, again, I warned you at the start of this video it was going to get depressing, but bloody hell, I didn't think it was going to get this depressing this quick. Next up, we could take a look at Samsung here. And again, sorry about the low resolution. This is from an archival backup there and a lower bit rate. So straight away, this was me when I was comparing 2TB SSDs between each of the ranges from Samsung at that time. This is another January 2024 stock footage. This is the 2TB across the Evo 980 Pro and 990 Pro series. You can see parity of around $159 to about $169. Again, I know it's slightly more than they're saying there. So why don't we see what exactly has changed there? Let's see if this is going to screw me. No, it's not. It's actually going to let me type that in. So let's go for, do you know what? I don't even know why I'm going for the 990 there, because if we just look at Samsung NVMe 2TB, we can give ourselves a miserable little chuckle at exactly what 2TB. So the 990 Pro, which was 169, has gone up to 384, 399 there, 368 for the Evo. That's Evo Plus model there. Again, horrible, horrible stuff. And one of the things, the worst thing about this is if we look up the 980 Pro variation, because remember the 980 Pro came out in 2020. We listed it as one of the earliest Gen 4 x 4 SSDs. It was them and WD. And that drive now at 2TB is 469. That is a drive that has seen little to no upgrades in that period. Indeed, the controller and indeed the NAND and its layer count there has changed practically zero across the board without default upgrades across the Samsung factory there. Again, I told you, I warned you this wasn't going to be a cheerful video. There's no happy ending here. This is just misery. Okay, moving on. Let's return to SATA SSDs, but in 2.5 inch, because realistically, these drives are legacy AF, and the fact that these still exist when most of us thought these would have been completely replaced by things like this, and now I know how much this is worth, I'll tell you right now, that's not leaving the table. But these should have gone away, frankly, but they're still with us. So given that the majority of the SSDs in the market that we're going to see in this form, I would argue more than half of them weren't produced in the last year, year and a half. Chances are they are way older than that because the demand and also manufacturing has moved away, by the way, from 2.5 inch SATA. Let's see how they've been affected because I dug this one out. This was, and I bet I didn't realize at the time of recording this, just how lucky I would have been to buy the drives at this price. This was when I was doing a little detailed look at SATA SSDs for populating 2.5 inch NAS devices. So I was doing a quick overview of different pricing. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave that play, and we're also going to loop it because it's that miserable. And this shows here on the left hand side of the screen just what the going rate for 1 and 2 TB. I think I went up to 4 and 8 TB if memory serves. I think, do I stop at 4? Let's find out. But while that's doing that on the left-hand side of the screen, let's go for SATA SSD. Oh, yep, I did include 8 TB. Do you know what? Let's pause on that one. Where was it? That's that 8 TB QLC drive. So QLC NAND, 8 TB at 586. So let's find that drive. Let's see what the going rate for that drive is these days. And if you can even get it. There we go. It has, wow. I mean, that 38% is a comedy. Thank you, Samsung, for lying directly to my face. So at that point, hilarious. Apparently that was down 31%. This is down 38%. Sure, Samsung. So again, that was 586. So we are looking at almost triple that price tag there, and a supposed drop from the list price. The list price of $2,399. Are you effing my... Oh, Robbie, you blissful, blissful idiot. Back in April 2024, I was looking at how the price difference between SATA hard drives and SATA SSDs in NAS, that had once, some 7 or 8 years when it really started emerging pre-pandemic, that hard drives and SSDs were about 3 to 4 times price differential. They started to get down to 2.5 times the differential. And I was joyous, but saying, hopefully it will get better. How little we knew. But that is what the price differential was for a WD Blue drive 4TB. It was $259. So we've already looked at SATA SSD, but you know what we haven't looked at? Just generally, what is the going rate right now on the 22nd of July, 2026 for a 4TB? We're going to go for, not 4TB and above, don't do that to me, Amazon. We'll look at internal hard drives. So we're looking at $194, $219. Ignore all of that lot. What's at 8TB? Again, the 4TB, the golden rule. If you followed this channel or any home labbing channel at all that talked about storage, you knew the going rate, the golden rule, was $99 for 4TB. Everything else, there was fluctuations, there was give and take, but the golden rule was $99 for 4TB. And then during promos, it might drop a tenner, it might drop 15 if you're lucky. Black Friday, you might get a bit more. And now, not only is the rule out the window, but the minute we move that to SSDs, so we'll leave the word NAS there in the title, what is that? What is this? Don't get me wrong, the differential technically hasn't changed. It's still 2.5 to 3 times. It just happens to be this bonkers arrangement with nothing but sheer lies backing it up there in the background that this drive was supposedly worth that price point. Now, if you've followed the channel for a while, you'll know that the bit of B-roll that I'm going to show you was one that was featured in, I reckon, about 8 to 9 different videos in the last year to a year and a half. So much so that I wish I could go back in time, and I'm sure there's lots of things I'd do if I could go back in time, maybe not wear this hoodie in this heat, but I would go back in time and tell myself of the beautiful time capsule that this little bit of B-roll represented in terms of SSD pricing. And again, if you watch the Link Station N videos, if you looked at the B-roll, the B-Link ME Mini video, you'll know the footage I'm going to show you. But it's this one. It was the cheapness of M.2 NVMe's in 4 terabytes. This video, I've still got the stamp of the date on it. It's the 6th of June, 2025. This video represents what we once had. Again, I scroll through and it is all of the 4TB drives. And there's some drives as low as $199, which unbeknownst to me, we go along, got rid of that sponsored nonsense in the middle. I always have to do that for the B-roll. But look at some of these drive prices. $208, $203, $229, $208, $196, $192 for a 4TB SSD. Where did we end up? $800. $699, $924, just bonkers numbers. But I think the most harrowing part is simply this whole business of sticking the RRP. You massive lies. And I'm not that naive. I understand this method of upselling has existed for the longest time, and we combat it every time we do a Prime Day video or a Black Friday video. But it's just the lies in the face right now. If and when the AI bubble pops, at least in terms of the way components are getting shafted, hopefully, fingers crossed, we start to see these prices get amended and they don't just start lying and saying 80% off. Now, the reason I highlight this drive is the same reason I really got on the case of this drive in a recent video. And that is, now we are paying even more for less in the form of DRAM-less drives. Taking advantage of host memory buffer, HMB, they're removing DRAM to keep the cost down. They are also removing the majority of the components. We talked about this before, and I know I'm going nuts here. This drive only has 2 chips on it. It's got a controller, and it's got 1 block of DRAM. This is a 2 TB drive, and I am well aware how lucky I am that brands will send me drives, and maybe they won't after this video. But it is insane to me that manufacturers have started cutting down NAND. You know, so the fewer NAND modules you got, the less read and write happening simultaneously, which ultimately can drop the performance sequential. But I would argue as well. But on top of that, the idea that you are being forced to rely on memory on your client system, which is already going nuts. This video is nothing to do with memory. I don't have anywhere near enough B-roll for that. But it's just so thoroughly depressing. It would be one thing if all these things would be really, really expensive, but the quality was there. But when the drives are being produced with fewer components, with shorter warranties and lower drive writes per day, as well as lower terabyte written stats, which are always promoted instead of the drive writes per day, which for me is a much more important calculation. It's the same data, but presented in a far more relatable way. It's just getting to me now. But none of those 8 TBs hurt me like this one. So this is July last year during Prime Day. This is when we could get an 8 TB Lexar or an 8 TB WD drive for around $500 to sub $600. The very idea of an 8 TB SSD is the swivel-eyed dreams of a madman. Look at this pricing here. $1,200, $1,900. Close to $2,000, and it bums me out, especially, let's pause that, with Lexar. I go to bat for Lexar and their SSDs. I think the Lexar range, the LN series is the NM series is such a great range of SSDs. Some of those, by the way, don't arrive with DRAM, and they still hit great performance because of the sheer number of NAND modules on the board there. I had a 4 TB that's still rocking an absolute demon in my PS5. But that is insane. I understand there are some brands out there that therefore they don't control all of the components. They are brands that are, they've got to use Phison controllers. They've got to rely on SK Hynix or even ADATA in some cases, or Coaxia and all these different component manufacturers that have got to supply some of the components. I get it. And in the case of Lexar, they are as subject to that as anyone else. But still, that is a completely unsustainable markup. But it is made infinitely worse when it is WD and Samsung. They make their own controllers in-house, their own NAND, they use their subsidiaries. They have got all the cards to slice these prices off more than they are. And a 530 Nika drive there is just, where is it? Let's get that in. Maybe it's already there and I've just looked away in my sheer unadulterated rage. But some of these markups are unreal. Actually, to their credit, that is less of an insanity price than I thought it was going to be. It's still insanity, but it's less of an insanity than I anticipated. Although why these 8 TBs here at a glance is costing you more for the one without the heatsink there. I'm assuming this is some NAND fun and games, but still, it's not as bad as I thought, but it's still pretty bloody bad. Here's an interesting one. I was messaged about this a couple of weeks ago for someone that was populating a new UniFi NAS. The prices have gone up on UniFi's website. Let's pause it there. There's a 16 TB drive, and the going rate for a 16 TB drive right now is up to £475, I should say. And it was back in, when was this video from? This is from the 3rd of October of last year. The price has notably gone up, but what's really interesting is not all of the drives are still available. The prices have gone up, but UniFi is clearly having something of a bother getting hold of some of these drives. So for example, the 8 TB there, the 8 TB is completely sold out. Now, whether it is that UniFi are not buying these drives for their systems because of the price hikes, or the fact that they're simply not able to get them in the current marketplace, is a bit of a worry, because this isn't the first time I've seen brands that roll out their accessories, and again we're looking at Synology there with their current range of hard drives, who I think are just price matching at the moment, because obviously their drives are provided them by Toshiba and Seagate and stuff like that. But the markup they are placing on top is so unsustainable that when we're looking at brands like this, again, I'm sure UniFi could charge or could pay a lot more for those drives. And UniFi buyers, I would argue UniFi ecosystem users are the most inclined to pay that extra. Even though UniFi can be quite cost effective, it's got a die-hard audience of buyers there. So the fact they don't have that drive listed when they probably could and stick a few days lead time on it is quite interesting to me. Maybe not for everyone, but it's interesting to me. We're going to end the fevered ravings of a madman today with what I would like to think of as the most depressing part of all, and that is 30 TB hard drives. 30 terabyte hard drive, we reviewed one on the channel a while ago. I got into an argument with a number of you about the size of hard drives and how they're growing. But now let's look at this video from the 28th of July 2025, so a year ago. What is and was the going rate for a 30 TB drive? Again, we're looking at Exos, we're looking at Seagate Ironwolf, and a 30 TB drive was sat around $599 to $699. And if you can get a hold of a 30 TB hard drive, and I do mean if, not when, if, you will be astounded how much you have to pay. If you try to get a hold of, for example, the Exos series drives, and again, this isn't just limited to Seagate, by the way, you could get WD Gold or Ultrastar, you are not looking at anything less than about $1,200. That price has gone up more than double what it was. But the worst part is that those users that even are prepared to throw money at the problem and go for the more expensive drives, a lot of the time you have limited buying opportunities. You can only get 2 or 4. Some retailers, again, B&H doesn't have that limitation, but some of them do. So even if you do want to fully populate a bigger device and you've got the money and you've looked at the rising cost, by the way, of cloud, because don't you think that cloud service providers, data center, hyperscale hosting isn't already capitalizing on this? There are limits available to number of drives, and multi-pack offerings on larger capacity drives are non-existent right now once you start looking at standard NAS class drives. If you're a data center and you're buying them in quad packs, or you're buying them in like those 20 drive cases like you can get from Ultrastar and stuff, there may be, but even then the pricing is by no means competitive. Now, in the introduction to this video, I said there was no happy ending, and that's technically true. There isn't really a happy ending to this story. However, there is something. Now, last year, for the first half of 2025, NAS sales from pretty much every vendor in the market, with the exception of Ugreen, who got super competitive and decided that profit wasn't something they cared about, but the rest of the NAS industry saw very few sales. And although we talk about hard drive, SSD and RAM and the bubble waiting for it to burst and prices to come down, the NAS industry bubble actually happened in summer of 2025. That was why, even though the likes of Prime Day and summer sales and stuff like that weren't really competitive, that was why Black Friday last year, the deals were insane, because brands needed to get rid of their sitting stock. They needed to liquidate some of the profit that was just sat there, the equity, if you will, so they could use it for future projects and cut their losses. Everything I'm seeing right now with hard drive and SSD prices, I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to see significant prices in the last quarter of the year, but post-summer, there is too much money in sitting stock, in NAS, in hard drives, in SSD, and the bubble's going to burst, and a lot of these vendors know it. So towards the end of this year, or at least towards the start of the bubble cracking, there are going to be insane prices. There really, really is. I believe that, because the market to spend this sort of money, although it seems to exist, otherwise how would they charge this much? It is plateauing. It is plateauing, that pricing. And once it breaks, that break will be monumental. What I'm saying is, don't buy any hard drives or SSDs or anything like that till minimum the end of September. If you can put off that project, don't put your data at risk, but if you can put off that project, do so. If you do have spare money now, buy a bigger NAS and fill it with fewer drives, or reuse old drives, because deals will come. I think they're going to land in Black Friday. I genuinely believe that. And hopefully, towards the end of the year, I'll be able to say that in another video. But right now, everything I'm seeing is a repeat of what we saw in 2025 when too much sitting stock wasn't being purchased. I know the game has changed. Everything from tariff problems that affected a lot of users last year and the flow and spending of money without thinking, oh, and if I wait a little bit longer, I'll be able to get it cheaper. On top of that, conflicts, the situation, the building blocks of not only financial society but commerce in general in this industry haven't changed all that much. And the result is there has to be this break in the dam, and it will happen. The seller's market is drawing to a close. It has to become the buyer's market or everything collapses. And if that happens, we're all going to put on our chainmail and live feudally anyway. But thank you so much for watching. I'm really sorry about today's depressing video. I had to get it out of my system. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.